I'm Irene, a 30-year-old woman who thought I had everything figured out. My job in sales was going well, and I loved the simple joys of life, especially my family. Every year, we would take a trip together, our annual tradition. We always went to Hawaii, a place where we could forget about the worries of the world. The beautiful beaches, the fresh food, and the time spent with my family made it my favorite part of the year. I was already looking forward to this year's trip. But that year, something unexpected was coming that would change everything. After our Christmas Eve family gathering, I was cleaning up when my mom made a statement that stopped me dead in my tracks. She said, "I don't think you'll be able to join us for the Hawaii trip this year." My heart dropped, and I was completely thrown off. "What do you mean?" I asked, hoping she was joking. Her eyes avoided mine, and I could tell she wasn't playing around. The air suddenly felt heavy, and I couldn't understand why she was saying this. My mind raced, searching for any reasonable explanation, but I could find none. Mom didn't seem to want to explain much at first, but then she added, "The budget is tight this year, and you reduced your support for Christoph's family." My brother, Christoph, had always struggled financially. For years, I had been sending him money every month, even though I didn't have a lot myself. I did it because I believed it was the right thing to do, and I loved my family. But hearing my mom say this, something didn't sit right with me. How could my financial support for Christoph's family affect the trip to Hawaii? I had sent plenty of money this year, so why was there a problem? I felt a storm of emotions, confusion, anger, and disbelief. I had been so committed to helping Christoph and his family, yet here I was, being told I couldn't join a simple family trip. "But I've been sending money every month," I said, my voice shaking. "I thought there would be enough for all of us to go to Hawaii." My mom looked troubled but didn't say much. My father, usually quiet, finally spoke up, saying, "We had to prioritize Christoph's family." I could feel the tension building, but I wasn't going to let this go without answers. Something didn't add up, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. I stayed up late that night, tossing and turning in bed. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Why had Christoph's family's needs always been so urgent? Where was the money going? I had always trusted Christoph's words, but now, everything felt off. The more I reflected, the more I realized that I hadn't really asked questions about how the money was being used. I'd just assumed it was going toward their needs, living expenses, education, things like that. But was it? I needed to confront him, to get the answers I deserved. I couldn't take it any longer. I had to meet Christoph. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about the trust I had placed in him, the years of sacrifice, and the betrayal I felt. I decided to arrange a meeting. I wanted him to explain himself, to tell me exactly where the money I sent was going. It was time to face the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. So I messaged him, asking for a quiet meeting at a local cafe, away from family. I needed to hear the truth directly from him, without distractions. Christoph agreed to meet, and when I arrived at the cafe, I was filled with a mix of emotions: nervousness, anger, but most of all, determination. I had to know the truth. Christoph seemed nervous too, looking a little uncomfortable as he sat down across from me. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. I didn't return his smile. There was too much at stake now. I wasn't here for small talk. "I need you to explain something to me," I started. "How exactly have you been using the money I've been sending you?" Christoph was taken aback by my directness. He froze for a moment, his eyes widening slightly. Then he stammered, "Well, it's for the family. The kids, living expenses." His words were quick, almost too quick, as if he were trying to cover something up. I wasn't buying it. "Is that all?" I asked, leaning forward, my gaze fixed on him. His eyes darted around, avoiding mine. There was something he wasn't telling me. I could see the guilt written all over his face, and I wasn't about to let him get away with lying anymore. I could feel the tension building between us, thick and uncomfortable. "Christoph?" I said, my voice cold. "Are you having an affair?" The question hung in the air, sharp and heavy. Christoph's face turned pale. He didn't answer immediately, but his silence spoke volumes. His eyes widened, and I saw his hand tremble slightly. "Who told you that?" he asked, his voice weak. I wasn't about to let him deflect. "Does it matter who told me?" I replied, my voice firm. "You're having an affair, aren't you?" He hesitated, and finally, with a long sigh, he admitted it. "Yes, it's true." The words hit me harder than I expected. My brother, someone I'd trusted, someone I had been helping for years, had been living a lie. I stared at him, trying to process the shock of the revelation. But I wasn't going to let the affair distract me from the real issue. "What I need to know," I said, my voice low and serious, "is where the money went. Why is there a shortage? You're telling me there isn't enough for the trip, but I've been sending money every month. What happened to it?" He looked uncomfortable, clearly not wanting to answer, but I needed the truth. Christoph finally let out a deep sigh and looked down at his hands. "I gave some of it to her," he said quietly. "Just a little. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did." I felt the rage bubbling up inside me. "You used my money for your affair?" I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. He couldn't look me in the eye, staring down at the table instead. "I didn't mean to, Irene. I'm sorry," he muttered, but his apology felt empty. I had worked hard for that money, saved every penny, and now I found out it was used for something so irresponsible. I could barely contain my anger. "How much exactly?" I demanded. Christoph hesitated, looking like he was calculating in his head. "Maybe around $10,000. Or more," he said quietly, his voice filled with guilt. My anger reached a boiling point. "How could you do this?" I almost shouted, my hands gripping the edge of the table. "That money was for your children, not your affair. You've stolen from your own family." He looked at me with regret, but I wasn't going to let him off the hook. "Do you feel any shame?" I asked coldly. "Do you even understand what you've done?" Christoph's face twisted with shame as he muttered, "I know it was wrong, Irene. I'm sorry. But it's over now, and I want to make it right." His words sounded desperate, but they didn't move me. "You don't get to make it right," I said firmly. "You've already crossed a line. The money I sent wasn't yours to spend, and you don't get to decide how it's used." I stood up, making it clear that the conversation was over. "I won't send you any more money, Christoph. You're on your own now." I walked away, the weight of the betrayal heavy on my chest. As I left the cafe, I felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about standing up for myself, about drawing a line that no one could cross. Christoph had made his choices, and now he would have to deal with the consequences. But I couldn't ignore the pain I felt for my nephew and niece. They didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of their parents' mess. I couldn't let Christoph's mistakes ruin their future. I made a decision then. I would do everything I could to protect them, even if it meant going against my own brother. In the weeks that followed, things only got worse for Christoph. His affair was exposed, and his marriage ended in divorce. His company, which was already struggling, began to collapse. As his financial situation grew worse, the consequences of his actions started to spiral out of control. My thoughts, however, were with my nephew and niece. They were the ones who would suffer the most. I couldn't let their future be destroyed by the chaos in their parents' lives. I made sure to set up a trust fund for their education, so the money would be safe from their father's recklessness. Christoph's life continued to fall apart, and eventually, his company went bankrupt. His relationship with his children deteriorated, and Colleen, his ex-wife, won full custody. Christoph was left alone, regret and sorrow consuming him. As for me, I moved forward with my life, refusing to let his mistakes define me. I focused on my work and built a future for myself. I was determined not to let the past weigh me down. The future was mine to shape, and I wasn't going to let anyone, even my own brother, take that away from me.